football causes domestic abuse. It's something I'm tempted to think when I read headlines like this, but I am wondering, is that really true? Data shows rates of domestic abuse rise during major football tournaments. But what does that actually mean, and why is that happening? Now, to answer that, I want to figure out what domestic abuse is, what's driving it, how that relates to football, and ultimately, what is it about football that sees increases in domestic abuse? In order to start understanding what domestic abuse is, I'm going to show you 2 statistics. Now, before seeing these, I did not realise the scale of the situation. In the UK, domestic abuse is widespread. Take a look at this. On average, one woman is killed by a male partner or ex-partner every week in England and Wales. And in the year ending June 2025, the police recorded a domestic abuse-related offence approximately every 40 seconds. And in order to understand what domestic abuse involves, we need to know what it isn't. While most of us are aware of the concept of abuse, whether from the media or personal experience, myths do prevail. For example, that abuse of a partner or family member involves a one-off violent incident or multiple separate violent incidents that were a momentary loss of control or crime of passion. But actually, in the legal context of the UK and what experts have been pushing for, is the understanding that domestic abuse isn't always violence, but can show up as coercive control. This is a pattern of abusive behaviours that are ongoing and sustained over time. The tactics and actions range from controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading to violent behaviour, and are often interspersed with periods of loving kindness and romantic gestures. The effect is to frighten, confuse, and create uncertainty to ultimately control the victim. So now I feel like I have a better idea of the scale of the problem and what it involves. But if we want to be able to do something about it, we've got to know what's causing it, or at least what's not causing it. Alcohol and drugs. People often blame those for causing perpetrators to become more violent, but check out what the domestic abuse charities are saying. Sure, there is evidence alcohol and drugs make existing abuse worse or trigger an attack, but they argue that's not the same as a cause of controlling behaviour. Think about the many people who use alcohol and drugs and don't abuse their partner. Also consider the stories of survivors who say the perpetrator wasn't a drinker. Ultimately, charities and experts argue the individual perpetrator is always responsible for their actions. So to really understand domestic abuse, I need to look deeper, much deeper. Before I do that though, I want to preface this. When it comes to what causes a person to engage in coercive control or be violent, the research isn't 100% decided. Ultimately, we are looking at a highly complex, sensitive issue. From what data we have though, we can see that while anyone can face domestic abuse, the crime is highly gendered, meaning it disproportionately affects women in amount, severity, and impact. And a significant body of research links domestic abuse to broader societal factors like gender norms and gender inequalities. If you or anyone you know has been affected by the issues raised in this video, I've listed details of organisations you can contact for information, advice and support in the description below. So then I'm thinking, okay, hold on a second. How has this got anything to do with football? For me, when I think about football violence in the UK, my first thought is football hooliganism. Researchers have defined hooliganism as disruptive and violent confrontations between rival fan groups, typically resulting in rioting, property damage, violence, and substance offences. However, a study in 2013 identified that domestic violence increased by 26% when the England national team won or drew in a football game, and increased by 38% when they lost. So interestingly, that violence we associate with football culture extends beyond fan subcultures and the stadium into family homes. Naturally, I'm tempted to think, all right, so we can say football is causing domestic abuse. Consider the important, brave and powerful testimonies from survivors. But then I'd have to stop myself. The researchers agree on one thing: correlation does not equal causation. Frustratingly, that still leaves my original question unanswered. If not football, why do we see such significant spikes during major football tournaments? Don't get me wrong, research has said factors like alcohol, gambling, weather, match expectations, team affiliations, the date and time of matches can increase the risk of domestic abuse. But truthfully, the studies showing the spikes in domestic abuse during football tournaments have major limitations. That being, they cannot explain why the increases were observed. So the answer is that we still do not know. However, here's the big plot twist. Does that mean we should keep trying to find out? See, some experts have argued that focusing on the link between football and domestic abuse risks masking the actual causes of domestic abuse and diverts our attention from gender norms and gender inequalities. I'm going to take you back to what I said earlier. Domestic abuse is typically an ongoing pattern of behaviour over a sustained period of time. So these spikes in incidents during football aren't one-off incidents. They can be linked to pre-existing patterns of abusive behaviour. Abuse continues outside of football matches and can be triggered by non-football related factors. So, have we been asking the wrong question? That doesn't mean football doesn't have a responsibility to help tackle domestic abuse though, nor does it mean football does not have a violence problem. To understand the scale of violence in English football and what football needs to do about it, check out my video on violence against women in football.